you should love the journey, not the destination, right? So I like to say you shouldn't have a map, but you should really have a compass. You need to have a compass internally of what it is that you love to do and what drives you, but not necessarily a map of where you want to be.
I'm Dr. Chris Setta, and I'm shining a light on the innovators of our profession to help transform your practice and inspire the future of our specialty. Welcome to the Illuminate Orthodontic Podcast. On today's show, my guest is Dr. Sean Holliday. Welcome back to Season 6 of Illuminate as we continue to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the podcast. I'm excited to share today's conversation, our third and final interview recorded during the AAO annual session in Philadelphia. And while we don't have a holiday-themed episode this year, we do have a conversation with my good friend, Dr. Sean Holliday. Dad jokes aside, it's an inspiring story about embracing change, leading with authenticity, and finding new ways to grow both personally and professionally. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after we spotlight an innovator helping to shape the future of our profession. Today's Illuminate Spotlight is the Tiny Changes Recycling Program, led by Meso Sustainability Chair Dr. Maddie Goodman. Making a difference for our planet doesn't have to be difficult. With the Tiny Changes Recycling Box, your team collects used aligners and other office plastics, then calls UPS when it's full. Partnering with TerraCycle, those materials are upcycled into playgrounds, benches, and more. Tiny Changes is hosted by the Mid-Atlantic Society of Orthodontists and is open to any dental professional in the US and Canada. Order your recycling box at meso.org and follow at Tiny Green Changes to join the movement today. Today, I'm thrilled to shine a light on an innovative orthodontist from Honolulu, Hawaii, who blends artistry and technology with the spirit of Aloha to create something truly special. Dr. Sean Holliday has built a thriving multi-location practice by mastering clear aligner therapy, digital workflows, and leadership rooted in collaboration and culture. As you'll hear on today's episode, Sean's story is one of bold reinvention, from predicting digital dentistry decades before it arrived, to scaling his startup practice, to ultimately using education to elevate others through his Ortho Masterclass platform. Whether you're looking to embrace change, inspire your team, or rediscover balance in your own journey, this conversation will leave you motivated to lead with purpose and maybe a little more aloha. Well, welcome to the podcast. How are you today, Sean?
I'm doing awesome, Chris.
Why don't you tell everyone where we're at?
So we're here at the AAO in Philadelphia. You know, I traveled 6 time zones over here. I practice in Honolulu, Hawaii. Just a hop, skip, and a jump for me to get over here.
I know you've been at the conference a short period of time. How's it been so far?
Well, it's been great. I love the AAO always. I love what the AAO does, but I love the meetings.
Me too.
It's just such an amazing meeting. I think, honestly, my favorite part is just meeting up with people like you and seeing friends and lots of other people. I just don't get a chance to do so. So as much as I can, I always make the trek out wherever it may be. And hopefully it's going to be in Hawaii sometime soon. Who knows?
I want to take a second to thank the AAO for having us. Wonderful meeting. You know, it's all about reconnection, like you said, and learning some great things. And one of my favorite meetings, I've been every year that I can. Of course, COVID, I know it was virtual. Sean, so excited to finally have you on the podcast here. Like you mentioned, we've been friends for a long time. I think that dates back to the Ortho Cosmos forum, right? That you did with Scott Fry for a period of time. I think I wrote a couple blog posts or guest posts or something of that nature.
You did. At the time, it was kind of fun. There was this new thing as Facebook groups. And Scott and I started out this OrthoCosmos deal, and it was fun to post regularly. I think at some point we were doing almost daily posts, and then it turned to weekly, and then we had additional contributors such as yourself. And it was a fun time, I think, to experience that in the early editions of Facebook groups.
That's right. That's right. So
they've certainly have matured over time.
yes. But I'm glad we've stayed friends despite the distance between us, and excited to have you on today, Sean. I see a beverage in front of us, right?
Yes, I'm excited to be on, and I know that obviously part of your signature is the beverage. So
yeah,
one of the first ways we met was, you're the master mixologist, and the
rumor has it.
The rumor has it, know the drinks well. I don't like beer, and I'm not a huge fan of wine, but I do love a good cocktail, especially signature cocktails in different restaurants. So we have a rum old fashioned.
Yeah. I think this was inspired by a drink that you and Jackie had in Honolulu recently.
Yeah, so my wife and I were celebrating our anniversary, and we went to this kind of like Italian fusion place in Honolulu. It's a brand new place. Really good stuff. And they had this $40 cocktail that was a rum old fashioned. I said, I have to try this thing, It's like smoked and everything. It was delicious. It's probably one of the best cocktails I've ever had. I just love old fashions, but I've never had it with rum.
Rum makes such a great old fashioned.
Yeah.
We don't quite have a full recreation. We are having a drink from the hotel lobby bar. So instead of a nice fine rum, I think we have regular old Bacardi. But let's take a sip. Let's give some notes.
There you go.
Hopefully we got a winner here. We're going to cheers our glasses. And in true Illuminate fashion, we're going to take a sip here.
All right.
Well, that is interesting because I think they made it like a more traditional old fashioned from like the 70s. To me, I'm tasting like seltzer water in there.
Oh, really?
Are you? Or like some carbonation to it?
There's definitely a lot more water than I'm used to.
Yeah. I think they like topped it off with like a splash of seltzer or something, which is interesting. Maybe not the best rum old fashioned I had, but at the same time, a beverage that will make for an illuminating conversation, I'm sure. And for those of you who maybe do not know Sean, or Doc Holliday, if you will, the ClinCheck gunslinger, Sean is a brilliant orthodontist serving up the highest quality orthodontic care, of course, with Aloha, recently celebrating your 20th anniversary in practice in Hawaii with 4 locations on the island of Oahu. Sean is considered a master clinician in clear aligner therapy. So excited to have you on. We have lots of great topics of conversation for today. We're going to talk about how Sean's global upbringing actually shaped his path in orthodontics. We're going to discuss his predicted rise of digital dentistry way back in 1995, 20 years ago, and how technology has transformed his practice. So excited to dive into that today. We're going to talk about some challenges of starting a practice from scratch in Hawaii, right? And what you can learn from your journey. We're going to talk about your approach to mastering clear aligner therapy, which I'm super excited to learn about today, and optimizing digital workflows with the ClinCheck Ninja himself. And we're going to explain what that means. And lastly, we're going to be talking about your course, Ortho Masterclass, and your in-office immersion course on the beautiful island of Oahu in Hawaii. I'm trying to do the accent. It's not working. And how you should attend this, because you know what? You can level up your orthodontic game, and who doesn't want to go to Hawaii? Let's be frank.
Hey, for sure.
Sean, before we dive into all these great things, I understand you're not from the island of Hawaii. Is that right?
That's correct. I was not born in Hawaii. In fact, I wasn't even born in the U.S. I was born in Costa Rica.
Wow.
So, pura vida. I am tico, as they say. So I was born in Costa Rica. My dad is American. He's actually from West Virginia. He moved down as a Peace Corps volunteer. Yeah. So my dad's an engineer. My mom's an artist. They met, fell in love. And I've been destined to be an orthodontist.
Yeah, you have like the perfect genetically bred to be an orthodontist, I believe.
I have no dentists in my family. After the Peace Corps, I guess you had to grow up. Once you have kids and stuff, you have to get a real job, so to speak. I think they pay very little. So he got a job with Monte banana pineapple plantations as an engineer. And we moved around a lot in Costa Rica. And then we lived in Hawaii for a short period of time back in the early 80s.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so we moved around a lot. And then after that, he took on as a project manager for the U.S. State Department, U.S. Embassy projects.
Oh, interesting. So I imagine you being native to Costa Rica, Spanish would be your first language, right?
Technically, Spanish would be my first language. I was bilingual from the beginning, when we were home. we would speak English and Spanish outside. I went to bilingual school most of my life, but technically Spanish would be my first language. I love languages. They're amazing.
Yeah, I understand you speak a few, right?
Yeah, over time, I traveled around a lot. I took French in high school, Italian in college. My parents did a stint several years in Moscow, Russia, so I learned Russian. Yeah, Gavadiu Paruski. So yeah, I would be what they call a polyglot. So
I don't even know what that means.
There's a bilingual, trilingual, and then beyond that, it's called polyglot.
Oh, is that
means
right?
you speak many languages.
Oh, interesting.
That's pretty common in certain areas of the world. In Europe, they speak a lot of languages.
Yeah. But not so much in America, probably.
In America, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took Spanish in high school and learned Italian. And I actually was, fun fact, president of my Latin club. So I guess I'm a polyglot too. Not that I can actually speak Latin at this point in time. You mentioned that your dad worked for the U.S. Embassy. And I believe that really is what led to you guys moving around, right?
Yeah. So we moved around a lot. So I've had the advantage. I'm blessed. Obviously, I love my parents and there's so much that they've given to me and my brother. One of the main advantages is just we have a worldwide perspective. So it's not easy to move around a lot. I would say if you talk to military families, things like that, they'll understand that. I used to go to a lot of American schools in foreign countries with a lot of the military kids. And we moved about every 2 to 3 years. It's crazy the amount of moving that we did. But yeah, after the project was done in Costa Rica with the embassy, we moved to Arlington, Virginia. So we're closer to DC area. So my dad actually took a project. They were building the embassy in Yemen back then.
Interesting.
But he went to Yemen. We lived in Arlington for a while because they didn't ship families there. Yeah, so we had a great time. I loved being in DC. Went to an amazing public school and some of the teachers that I remember for life, just an amazing experience. After that project was done, then we moved to San Salvador for the embassy there.
Okay.
And that was a very interesting experience as well. Latin American country, obviously, you spoke Spanish. It's funny because when I went to the U.S. in D.C., I went to English as a second language course. And fortunately, my teacher pulled me out of that. And then when I went to El Salvador, they put me in Spanish as a second language class. And I knew more than the teacher did.
That's so funny. So it sounds like your dad, with a lot of these embassy trips, he went to like a lot of tumultuous countries, right?
Yeah, he's kind of crazy in that way. I think his family would say that. So during our stint there, they had a civil war and the guerrillas took over the capital for a while. There was like some major fighting.
Yeah, I sort of remember that.
So there was a point they actually like took over a Sheraton hotel and the Delta Force was even like, that was like 3 blocks from my home.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy. So they had a helicopter right above my house strafing and all the shells were falling on my house. It was crazy. And we got evacuated. So I know my grandmother and my uncle were like, what are you doing? Like, why is your family there?
Yeah.
But it was a crazy place, but it was amazing, but it was tough. When there's warfare, there's collateral damage. And I was in 7th grade at the time and my English teacher was at a bar with some friends. And when he walked out, he got hit with shrapnel. And he passed.
Oh my gosh.
It's just the reality of how things are. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Obviously, you guys got evacuated out of El Salvador.
We did. And we went back after that.
Well, there you go.
To finish the project, yes.
Is that when you went to DC or was it?
No, that was after DC. So we went to El Salvador for a few years. Once the project finished, my dad's company finished the projects with the State Department. So we went back to the home base where his firm was based at, which was in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay, St. Louis, Missouri. So that's where you sort of, I guess, went to high school for the most part.
Right. So I went there halfway through my freshman year. It was not fun to change high school on freshman year in the middle. But yeah, it was neat to kind of be in a different place. So back in the U.S. at that stage in the Midwest. And yeah, it was a great few years there to high school. And it was a formative time, I think, for me. Obviously, in high school, we try to figure out what we're going to do, right? So besides trying to be a marine biologist, baseball player, or architect, whatever else I was dreaming up when I was little, my mom was going through orthodontic treatment as an adult. And she transferred over there to a private practice orthodontist. And my brother was doing orthodontic treatment as well. He was actually being seen at St. Louis University with the residents.
Oh, interesting.
And I was very intrigued to the point that obviously I became an orthodontist. I thought this was amazing. First of all, like I said, my dad's an engineer, my mom's an artist. So I was destined to be an orthodontist. This is some key gifts that my parents gave me in the way that I'm able to be in that perspective, right, left brain. And I loved science. I love engineering and technology and caring for people. I think oftentimes being in the service industry and what we do. And I really wanted a purposeful job. I think many times we can find ways to make money, but it's harder to find a job that fills, your purpose, and it gives you something relevant and important to do besides just making money. And that's what I saw. I mean, I saw the quality of life of this private practice orthodontist working 3 days a week. You couldn't Google back then, but you could certainly find out that they made pretty good money, right, in that end. So, and it wasn't like, you're an ER doc and on call all the time. I had uncles that were physicians, and that's a tough life, you know. It's a noble profession, but orthodontics has a lot of advantages. And so I made that decision. And then, what the other reason is, my dad worked corporate construction for a long time. And when you work in a corporate job, corporate politics and the ladder and everything like that, it has its challenges, which were challenging for him. And so I told him, Dad, I want to own my own business. I want to have my own enterprise. And when I researched that, I saw that orthodontists could own their own practice. They could run, obviously doing orthodontics, but also could be successful in running their own business. And that's one of the reasons why I'm where I am today. I just love it. That's a huge advantage of what we do that I think oftentimes we forget.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Sean, I believe you told me at one point that when you were in high school, you went to the AAO headquarters. Is that right?
Yeah. So another little known fact, I literally from high school went down to Lindbergh Boulevard, which is the headquarters of the AAO. And it was just a couple miles from my house, actually. And I went to the building, walked in, and I just said, hey, I want to be an orthodontist. Can you give me some information? And the lady was really nice. I probably know who she is. The AAO was amazing. They had brochures and pamphlets, all these things.
Oh, did they?
For me as a high schooler was very inspirational, and I could find out what I needed to do. I was just shocked that I had to be a dentist to be an orthodontist. I just thought that was I could choose, you know what I mean? And so what I did was just spend time in my mom's dentist office observing, if I'm getting into dental profession, I want to know all that I can about it.
Right.
And so I worked part-time, observed, helped, and I just said, wow, this is it. It was just a blend of artistic sense, science, the business part of it. There's so many aspects. So I dove right in. This was junior year of high school when I made that decision. So then I started looking into different schools to apply.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting.
So what happened is that as I was applying for dental school, I wanted to go through dental school as quickly as possible. And back then, the University of Missouri, Kansas City had a 6-year dental program. So you could go straight out of high school do 2 years of undergrad and then 4 years of dentistry, and you get a BA DDS. And there's some other programs that are shorter. At the time, I think Marquette had something.
Oh, really?
I've heard a 7-year. I think
UOP.
There's 7 years programs. But the 6-year program is no longer there. But it was a great opportunity. I could pay in-state tuition, go straight out of high school right into what I wanted to do. And so it's interesting because in high school, I interviewed at the dental school. So back in 1995, when I graduated in high school, I went to the dental school to interview because I was being interviewed to be a dental student, right? I still had to do my undergrad, but they interviewed me. And you know how it is in the interviews, like to ask questions about things. And I was very interested into computers. Back then, this is pre-internet age, right? Or maybe early internet, CompUS, dial-up, AOL or something. Yeah. You had what kind of modem you had or something like that. Nobody else can take phone calls and all that stuff. Yeah, those back in the day. Anyways.
Rough life we had.
Rough life, I know. And I was really excited. I just thought this digital thing is pretty amazing. So I asked Dr. Jones, who was interviewing me, I said, how do you think dentistry will be impacted by computers?
Yeah.
And he said, Sean, dentistry never will be impacted by computers. And look at how digital age is now. My dad reminds me of this all the time because he comes to my office. I think most parents, are proud of their kids and stuff like that. And he'll come to my office and walk around and talk to the team and everything. And he always comments this story because he remembers my shoulders were down. I was kind of a little bit disappointed, because I thought, wow, that's kind of disappointing to hear. But anyway, I just shook it off and moved on. But he looks at my practice now where I have 3D printers, intraoral scanners. We're fully digital.
Super high tech.
Everything's on the cloud, all that stuff, super high tech. And he says, you know what, Sean, that was your dream, wasn't it? And I say, yeah, absolutely, Dad.
He must be so proud.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about that. And it's just fun to have that journey early on. I know digital practice is to some degree almost a given nowadays, but back then it really wasn't. And that transition was quite a journey, and it's an exciting one, I think.
You know, probably back in 1995, if they had anything, it maybe was like starting to get into computerized scheduling and maybe digital radiographs, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
Like very
I think at the
early
time
days?
they would scan them, yeah. So our dental school, I think when I graduated as a senior dental student, they had some mild semblance of it was not a direct sensor. You had to use the plates or whatever. And then, yes, I think they had some scheduling. So it's pretty early in 2001 when I graduated from dental school.
I believe you went to dental school at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, right?
Yes.
What was that program like?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it's a very strong, clinically focused program. I would say from a didactic sense, I could tell when I went to ortho, a lot of my co-residents had pretty strong textbook knowledge, things that they did well with the boards, but I did well on the boards as well. Just a lot of clinical knowledge, so I really appreciate the program. You know, I was like, I think 5th in my class, and I only got like 3 interviews. If you're like number 1 or 2, you got
That's crazy.
all the picks. And then once you get to like 3 or 4 or 5 in your class, it's slim pickings. And I think the 6th person in my class had 0 interviews. And
I think
so
I was
ortho
19,
was very, very competitive, you know? And I think it's probably even more competitive now than it was then. So, you know, it's interesting to look back at those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kansas City was fun because, you know, I think there were some pivotal moments there. I made a lot of friends because I'm not originally from the U.S., you know. I connected really well with the Hawaii students. They actually have a few spots saved. There's a very huge alumni association from Hawaii.
So why? What's the connection there?
So the connection there is because there's no dental school in Hawaii. So they saved some spots. And you think that the most alumni would be from a West Coast school, but this goes way back to the Second World War. I don't know if you know this story, but there was a lot of prejudice against Asian Americans. And so they wouldn't let them get into some of the West Coast schools, particularly Japanese Americans during World War II. But Kansas City did. And so there's a very strong history, which I respect. It's pretty amazing to hear about it from some of the doctors that were, you know, practicing at that time or entering school. So Hawaii never forgets from that end. And so there's a very strong alumni association. And we have a strong group that give and that participate. And certainly there's a few spots that are saved for Hawaii kids to go to school there.
Wow, I never realized like the connection there.
So after Kansas City, then I went to Chicago. My parents were actually living there at the time. So my dad was working for the University of Chicago with some of the projects that they were building out there. And so it was kind of fun to think about what program I was going to go. And Chicago was my top pick. And I loved it. I mean, I did the 6-year dental program, and then I picked a longer program. I didn't want to do one of the short 2-year programs. I wanted the master's program. I even considered a PhD track, but I wanted to spend time learning what I really love to do, which is orthodontics, right? And that's what I went in. And so Dr. Evans ran a really good program with amazing speakers. I mean, because in Chicago, she recruited a lot of big names. And Illinois has a long history. So
does it?
Back in like Dr. Brody days, he taught some key names out there in history. And we had some really amazing faculty. We got to learn about Ricketts Bioprogressive in the Ricketts room by Dr. Ricketts. So he actually would come a couple times a year.
That's amazing.
That was amazing. He was a crazy guy. He was really fun. It was out of the box thinking, just so many things. He introduced the transverse dimension to us when we were looking at cephs in 2D, you know, and he would talk about frontal cephs and so many other aspects. It was to meet key names. So he was one. The other is Dr. Tom Graber. He was living, he would teach a course in the Brody room, and we would talk story there with him about stuff, and it was amazing. I mean, these are
orthodontic legends.
Right? Yeah. We learned about the Haas expander from Andy Haas. So from Ohio, he would come there and taught. We learned from all over, and I think that's what I loved about the program is that we learned so many different techniques, so much different breadth of orthodontic knowledge, not focused on any one single philosophy. And I think that's what helped me drive even more passion to it. I really loved my time there. And Chicago has great food. It's a great food scene. But I love the residency.
Good Chicago dogs. I love it. So tell me, how'd you get from Chicago to Hawaii?
Well, I met a girl from Hawaii in dental school. So, you know, we were dating, we were engaged, and she pretty much said, I'm going to Hawaii. I know when you graduate, so either you come with me or that's it, I guess, right?
And she was not a dentist.
It's an ultimatum. She is a
right?
dentist, yes.
Oh, she is a dentist.
Yeah,
okay.
she is a dentist. My ex-wife kind of brought me to Hawaii. So yeah, we got married while I was in residency. I had to ask permission from my department chair to take couple weeks off.
Oh, wow.
And then right after that, I was screening patients for my board so I could get licensed in the state of Hawaii. That was quite an interesting fact.
Wow.
And so I had to learn, like my buddy Troy, we would go up to the undergrad clinic so I could prep class 2 amalgams and practice that. So yeah, I mean, Hawaii is an interesting place. A lot of people in Chicago told me I was nuts. It's not a very business friendly place. I mean, Hawaii is amazing, but it's also brutal at the same time. So it's, obviously there's the beauty of Hawaii, it's paradise, it's an island and things like that. But when it comes to business perspective, it's very challenging, especially when you're not from there.
Yeah.
But I would say even for those who are from there, you're practicing literally on an island. It's the most expensive cost of living, one of the most expensive cities in the nation.
Is that right?
It has probably some of the highest tax rates. I know California tends to, brag that they have the highest tax, but because we have general excise tax and other taxes that are hidden within fees, Hawaii is probably, if not the highest in tax rate. So it's a very high cost of living state that has so many different challenges. And from a high-paced environment in Chicago, when I moved to Hawaii, it was pretty rough the first 6 months.
Was it?
Because, the change of pace, I went and there were 0 opportunities basically for me. I was able to sign a 3-month contract with an orthodontist that gave me the foot in the door. And he said, hey, Sean, let's see how it works out. I figured, well, I have the ultimatum. I'm going to go to Hawaii anyway. So that was the only job I could find. My ex-wife at the time, she could find plenty of jobs, to work as a general practitioner. But as orthodontist, there wasn't any opportunities.
It was slim pickings. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah.
So after 3 months, unfortunately, this orthodontist said, hey, Sean, I know that I offered you an associateship, your contract's over, and I'm not going to be able to renew it for you because I'm getting divorced and I just can't afford to sell the practice to you at this time. So I was like, okay. And so he said, well, here's 6 patients. If you like, you're a great guy. You can sublease space. You can use my office on the days that I'm not here and just build your own. And
he gave you 6 patients.
He gave me 6 patients, yeah. So, I basically started from scratch. The first year, this is to give you some perspective, I produced 40,000 total. That's
in the entire first year.
Yeah. Well, yes, almost in the first year. And then basically, I netted 20,000. So I was making probably less than minimum wage. I don't know how that is, but I had to file for forbearance on my student loans.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And they were like, wait a minute, you're an orthodontist. Like, why are you filing for forbearance? I was drawing up credit card debt, whatever I could do to try to figure out what to do. And I just worked.
That must have been so stressful.
Yeah, it was tough. That's why, it was just a difficult situation, but I was committed to do what I could do. And I'm glad to make the effort and the work. And so certainly at this point, I can tell you it's paid off. But at the time was pretty rough, right? So I was stressed out. I live over there. Yeah, the beaches are beautiful, but I was just trying to see how I was going to make it happen. And so I would visit offices, try to do the muffin run, so to speak. We would drop off malasadas, whatever it is, treats at the office. And most of them would be like, well, that's great, Sean. I'd take them out to lunch and everything. And they'd be like, but my cousin is also an orthodontist, or my golf buddy or whatever. And they say that you're great, Sean, great to meet you. But, we'll see if we send you any patients kind of stuff. And they never did. And I visited one office of this guy. And he told me, Sean, you're a great guy. I'm just going to tell you something because I'm not from here.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and he says, you're going to either need to figure something out or you're not going to make it here. And he said,
really? He was
you
that
just
direct?
Can't. Yeah, he just said, I'm going to tell it straight to you. You need to figure out what is your niche. What are you going to differentiate yourself? Because you're a great guy, but there's lots of great guys and gals here already that practice and they have solid practices. You may be a great clinician, but there's lots of great clinicians here. It's just not going to cut it in this environment. And you need to really think about how you're going to differentiate your practice.
When we come back in just a moment, Sean reveals how this moment of tough love sparked a complete reinvention, shifting from a struggling startup to scaling his practice through what would become his ClinCheck Ninja approach. Plus, Sean shares some of his top aligner pearls to help you streamline your planning and treatment efficiency. Stay with us. You're listening to the Illuminate Orthodontic Podcast. kind support for this podcast comes from the Aligner Intensive Fellowship. With a commitment to educate orthodontic specialists on all things aligners, the Aligner Intensive Fellowship is the most comprehensive aligner course in the world. Since 2017, over 7,000 orthodontists have enjoyed the peer-to-peer learning with a satisfaction rate above 90%. The course has been reimagined and optimized and is always adding new content. The Aligner Intensive Fellowship is also available at no cost to all orthodontic residents and full-time faculty in the US and Canada. For further details and course curriculum, please visit alignerfellowship.com. Welcome back to our conversation with Dr. Sean Holliday.
And so I really took it to heart because at that point, I mean, it's just, point of desperation at some point to see what I was going to do. So I was taking CE courses. In my practice, I was doing like clear for the cost of metal, and I would do lingual braces, and I did aligners. And, as I tracked it, just all of a sudden, clear aligners became the main draw. I mean, patients were drawn to it. And so over the years, I focused more to improve myself clinically, but that was a key differentiating factor.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Let me ask you this, Sean. So was there anyone on the island of Oahu or in Hawaii in general that was really doing aligners at the time?
Yeah, so there are a couple offices that were doing a lot. So the top one was an orthodontist, and she had an amazing practice. I tried to associate there, and it just didn't work out. And then there was a GP office, and so I subleased there. And then he was the number 2 provider. At that point, it was like premier provider of Invisalign. That was like the top notch, right? So whatever they did, 50 or 100 cases a year. And he was doing a lot of aligners, and he said, hey, you can come in on Thursdays when I'm not here, and you can see patients. And I kept thinking, Invisalign doesn't work. Aligners don't treat any cases. So I thought, I'm going to go in there and treat all these cases with braces. And it was an eye-opening experience because even though he was a general practitioner and he did a pretty decent job, I thought, I know I can do this better. And so I really dove into learning how to do it. I said, I'm an orthodontist. I'm not here trained to do brackets and wires. I'm trained really to move teeth, to change people's lives and confidence. And so if this is really a key measure, I figured, hey, and I was inspired by some of the classes. I know you've had guests with Dave Boschkin. He presented IPW.
The great Dave Boschkin,
yeah. So I was like, wow, this is stuff that I didn't learn in residency. They did not tell me that this stuff would happen. Every CE course I could, I learned as much as possible. And then over time, I just dove more and more into it to the point that now it's basically our core competence. Like 80% of our practice is clear.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. I want to ask you this, Sean. Do you think because you did relocate and move around so much in your childhood, that made you a little more like adaptable to things?
Yeah, so I think the main thing in my practice that has helped me is that adaptability, because that's how I made friends with the Hawaii students. That's how I adapted as I moved. I'm just easily adaptable to wherever I move. And that's, benefit of my childhood years. And basically, I adapted quite a bit in my practice, to the culture, because I think Hawaii, although many people see it as a very closed culture, most islands try to safeguard their place and their history and things. And there's a lot of history in Hawaii as well. But I think mostly in Hawaii, the biggest thing is that most people don't want people moving in from the mainland who tell them like, well, it sucks and this is here and it's so expensive and the traffic's terrible, all these things. In some ways, and you want to kind of adapt to the culture, right? When in Rome, do as the Romans do, so to speak.
Right.
And so oftentimes that adaptability for me helped me a lot, I think, to just kind of make it my own home. I mean, I've been there almost 21 years at this stage.
Yeah.
So that helped me a lot. And that helps me a lot in the exam room. I would say when I meet patients, it's pretty amazing to sit in a consult and get to know people. And then oftentimes they're like, well, I'm from Virginia. And I can tell them, hey, I lived in Arlington. Or sometimes they'll speak other languages. Because we see a lot of military families from all over. And they move around to different bases, which are international sometimes as well. So I think that's that connection that always helps. And I think that helps in anywhere that you practice. But certainly it is an advantage that I have.
Yeah. Sean, I want to ask you this too. I mean, obviously you came into a really tough environment where you had to survive and thrive, really. Do you have any advice for new residents that are also like maybe trying to start a practice or get a footing in a saturated market?
When I look at things, I always see opportunity, but definitely there's headwinds, whether it's the economy or the cost of education now. And certainly a lot of markets are very saturated. Certain areas of the country, maybe you can plant the flag, build an office, and then build a multi-million-dollar practice. But those opportunities are few and far between. And so I can share that, at least in my perspective, even though it's 20 years ago, this is very relevant to how it is today, is you just really need to work hard at the core things that matter, right? In patient care.
Yeah.
And taking care of those who are around you, your team, and the community that you serve, and then making sure that you put the effort. It's not just an easy ride anymore. But I also, just to paint a positive picture, is that if you're new in practice, or even if you're established and you're struggling, don't discourage. It's just you need to really put your effort into making sure that your practice thrives by making a conscientious effort into the key things that make a difference.
That's really well said and great advice, Sean. I want to transition a little bit here because, not only did you get into aligners, but you went deep into aligners. And I believe you actually, at this point, you're considered a Diamond plus Apex. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Are you the top of Diamond Head Mountain there?
Yeah, Diamond Head Mountain. Yeah, they just give me a trophy to shut me up. Okay, so Diamond Apex is an interesting tier because nobody really knows about it. I always like to compare it to Align has their tiers.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like the black card, the Centurion black card. Amex has the platinum card. There's a myth out there that there's a Centurion black card. If you spend X amount of money, you get this like card, right? It's a myth. And so nobody says anything about it. That's how it is with Diamond Apex. No one really knows it's there, but it is there. It's a tier that you do over 1,000 cases a year. So, there's Blue Diamond and then there's Diamond Apex. I think those are fun things to acknowledge, but I acknowledge my team and just the amount of care and the impact that we've made. I think those are the important parts. But it is fun to have the little plaques and stuff around in the office.
No, I think it's amazing.
I certainly pay for them.
I'm sure you do. And I think at this point you've done 11,000 cases. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how many cases. We do quite a few per year now, and we surpassed the 11,000 mark. It's very interesting. Thank you. I think from my perspective is a learning process. So that's not a destination, it's a journey. And I certainly wouldn't call myself the ultimate master, but I'm in the journey for that. And I find that over the years, I learned a lot. First, in my first few hundred cases was like, can I do it? Can Invisalign help me achieve this and that? And then over the years, it's just like, how can I do it better? Really, then it's gaining efficiency and it's just really getting to the level where, just like Tiger Woods or any other, from a sportsmanship, you get to the basics of the process, practice, to an nth degree. And then it becomes much more predictable, much more fun. Just like anything else, I think you just have to master your craft. I think there's practices that can thrive really well with fixed appliance. I have nothing against any appliance, and I don't think anybody should have anything against the clear aligner appliance because we're not braces odontics. We're not clear aligner odontics. We're orthodontists. Right. I was taught that you could take a piece of wire, rubber bands, and gum or something or glue, and you can move teeth. So, I think that's the thing. We're innovative. We learn the biology, we know growth and development, we know how to move teeth. I don't care if it's plastic, 3D printed materials, wires, whatever it is that we do, you just have to master that technique. I think focus on a core competence, an area that you can truly put your stamp on it, and then just go deep into that to create amazing results.
Right. And I think you went really deep, and I know you're like really a systems guy, very like data driven. I do consider you a black belt as far as aligners. I believe you teach, and we're going to tease this a little bit, the Ortho Masterclass, right?
Yeah.
And you consider yourself, I guess, like the ClinCheck Ninja, right? How did that come about?
So that was kind of fun, a story behind that. My daughter used to say at some point, I don't know if she wants to be an orthodontist at all, but at a point she used to say, it's really cool. I love to be the boss. And then she also said, Dad, you don't work. And I was like, what do you mean I don't work? I work hard,
Yeah.
And she said, no, you just play video games.
That's how she perceived it.
That's how she perceived the ClinChecks, right? And so it was really interesting, and we would play games and stuff. And at the time, she was playing a game. It's called Fruit Ninja.
I remember
you could
Fruit
swipe
Ninja,
it and you could cut things or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'm trying to be as efficient as possible with my digital workflow so my kids don't know that I play video games. And so it's fun. So that's where the Ninja came from. So I went for the ClinCheck Ninja name.
It was your alter ego.
My alter ego. So, you go from that. And yeah, I try to create content. I think when I teach, it's fun to show cases. I mean, any of us have great cases. I think there's a lot of master clinicians out there. I like to dive into the process. So the black box, so to speak, of how things are. And I respect clinicians that show amazing cases, whether it's on Facebook groups or lectures and stuff like that. And you can look at before and afters and it's amazing. But that's really like, you're just showing off your cases. And I'm not trying to belittle that. I mean,
right.
I'm ABO certified. I presented cases. Those are really important things to show to your peers and to reach a certain level of experience. But at the same time, what I think benefits from a teaching perspective is how did you get there? And that's what I've been focusing a lot is on the process, particularly as I've grown in my practice. Now I have multiple associates. And so all of a sudden, the process, as some people call me the process king, is just really, it's the king of kings. I mean, that's the most important part because if you don't know how to do it, it's just a craft. It's just a practice. You really want to set up systems to be able to reach a different level. And that's kind of how I've done it. The ClinCheck Ninja thing came about that I would teach and I would do a live demo of moving teeth or whatever. And then people were just like amazed, like, oh, that was so fast or whatever. Because I spent like 2-3 minutes at most doing modifications. And to do that, you really need to like use keyboard shortcuts and the mouse effectively understand some of those things. And you can do it pretty fast if you learn how to do that properly.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, you've done so many cases, such a high volume that if you're not really efficient with it, this is going to take over your life, right? With all this digital homework.
Hey, it does. At some point, it was like 10, 11 years ago. And 2014 was the best of years. Sometimes I was producing a lot. My practice was really, from an external perspective, was knocking out of the park. But inside, it was a terrible time because I was like doing ClinChecks all the time. I was 7 days a week almost in practice because ClinCheck time or whatever software you're using is doctor time, right? So you're sitting in front of it. And so it was something that I had needed to figure out. So that's what I love to teach doctors because as they dive in more, there's going to be some pain points, right? So at some point, you're going to go through the same journey that I did. You're trying to figure out, does it work or not, right? You get excited of reaching some of these outcomes. And then you realize the more that I do, there's a quality of life issue, right? You're going to burn out.
Yeah.
If you start scaling, as you start seeing 200, starts, 400 starts, 600 starts, 800 starts a year doing aligners, there's going to be a lot of clinical efficiencies in your practice, but there's going to be some pain points personally that needs to be managed. And that's where you should get a coach. I'm certainly glad to do it, but there's plenty of other of my friends that also are passed on the other side of this, that you should really seek help if you're spending an ungodly amount of time doing digital workflow. And you see that not just in aligners. I mean, now you're looking at digital workflow across with braces when you look at digital braces products and things like that. So basically that ClinCheck can be across any type of digital platform, and that time is relevant.
Yeah, certainly a lot of great coaches out there. Shout out to Jonathan and Maz, Barry Glazer, Willie Dayan, who I saw this weekend, who I can't wait to get him on the podcast. But Sean, I'd love to learn more from you. And being from Hawaii here, we're going to play on this Hawaiian theme. I know Hawaii is known for their pearls, right? So we're going to do a deep dive. And I think Hawaii is known for the black pearl, right? The black pearl of Hawaii.
Maui, I think, they
Maui,
have
okay, Maui,
pearls,
they have, special pearls here. So I would love some special, like hidden pearls of ClinCheck efficiency from the master, ClinCheck Ninja himself, Sean Holliday. What do you have for us?
All right. Glad to do that. I will tell you that oftentimes, as much as the ClinCheck Ninja part is fun to like move teeth around, whip them around in the ClinCheck, the key thing is that you need to set up routines in a template. So very much like a cook, you don't chop the onions and, prepare the broth and all those things at the time of meal prep. It needs to be done well ahead, you know? And so a routinized process of templates, whether it's digital or working with text or whatever it is super critical. You need to set up the structure. So based on different malocclusion types, things like that, I teach something I like to call the 9 treatment plans, which is basically 9 different core ingredients that are set up based on malocclusion types, class 1, class 2s, different staging, open bites, deep bites, extraction cases, that kind of stuff. So you need to set a template and an approach on how these are done so that you're only focusing not on 100% of the treatment plan, but the last 10%. So you can be far more effective. In fact, the less that you do, the more effective you're going to be because you're concentrated on what really matters. All the other stuff, the minutia is already taken care of because you've set up a system to do that. And then all of a sudden, when you're moving the teeth, you're not moving 32 teeth. You're only tweaking 1 or 2, or sometimes just
So
improving the case
smart,
because it's really well set up.
So are you using the IPP as like templates? The Invisalign personalized plan?
We're working towards it to improve it. I mean, it's really not AI, it's an automation system. So it doesn't automate all of my protocols yet. But we're working on it. I do have a recipe. It's gotten much improved. And it's hard because I've invested so much in my techs. Let's just be honest, when you do tons of cases, you do get some of that white glove service. And so it is.
Well, you're also Costa Rican, Sean.
Yeah, there you go. I am Costa Rican too, so that gives you some insight. So we're working on the process. Sometimes you improve a lot. So one example I would give is like Tiger Woods, right? So he changed his swing, right? He had a great swing, but he knew that was a limit. At some point, that swing can only get you so far. And then he switched hand or whatever else that he did. I'm not a huge golf aficionado, but I do know that story because it's very interesting that sometimes you climb to the summit and that's as far as you can reach, right? And then if you want to climb a higher summit, you got to get down the mountain to the valley and then back up, right? And so I think that's part of the journey, that sometimes we learn something that's really good and we get comfortable with it. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to relearn something different. And that can be within the same appliance or maybe between appliance systems, that sometimes we just, as much as we've invested, there's a sunk cost to it, and that there's certainly a benefit that we've reached from it. But if you want to get to the next level, sometimes you just need to readjust it. And that's kind of where I'm at in the journey. I think the process continues to improve. It's just R&D and innovation is there.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think getting to like same day ClinCheck. So basically that's a vision that I'm in on. So I'd love to get there. So I'm working on it.
I want to clarify these templates. So it's for different types of malocclusions, because I don't think that was entirely too clear in terms of what are these templates that you're recommending?
Yeah, so it's a way that I hacked the system. So the system in the past was designed on 13 different questions and special instructions that you have to technicians. So I kind of pre-fill almost everything to the point that it's almost filled out completely, and you just tweak the last few things. So you give a few instructions, and then we're all calibrated. So that's the key thing.
Okay.
When you scale and you grow, right? So if you're a single doctor practice, really everything's at your whim. When you're doing a certain level of cases, it's a craft and it's an art form, and you certainly can redivert really easily, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have full control of things. This is the challenge that most orthodontists, we're not really in a team approach. Most practices thrive on a single doctor, and I run a 5-doctor practice. So you need to calibrate for that to work. Otherwise, it's pandemonium. It's a mess. You'll have a very messy, terrible practice if everybody's doing their own thing 5 different ways. You get 5 orthodontists in one room, they're going to give you 10 different treatment plans, maybe 20, right? So how do you run an efficient practice on that with great customer service? How do you maintain quality of care and all that kind of stuff? And there's only one way to do that, and that means that you calibrate. That means it's the Holliday way. It's not the Sean Holliday way. It's the way that us as a team.
The Holliday orthodontic way.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we all bring in our expertise and our knowledge and our experience together to develop these systems so that there's a calibration in that process. So let's say, Chris, you and I work together, and I see your patient. I know what your mind was already, and I know the process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm not going to go in there and repo all your brackets or refine the case because I want it my way or whatever. We have to align in a vision of what success looks like.
Yeah.
And that has to go from the doctors, which are the key pieces of that vision, goes down to the team who needs to help you implement that, and then to all the ancillary key team members that are involved.
Oh,
so
for sure.
Technicians, whether you have an in-house lab or you outsource it to whatever brand or company that you use, those people need to be well calibrated with what you're doing in the system.
Now, how do you guys calibrate? I mean, is it in-person team meetings, like Zoom calls, like Slack? How do you guys do this?
Yeah, so, we do Slack for regular communication, but literally each month we do a doctor meeting to review what works, what doesn't work. Once a year, we kind of do a deep dive into the main process. And, selfishly, I love to go to Costa Rica. So I love to go once a year also to meet with my tech team there as well to calibrate again. And so from that, you mentioned data. When you've seen 11,000 cases, what I have a huge advantage in the group practice is that I have lots of consecutively treated cases and data that we mine. I don't have like millions of cases like Align Technology does, but I certainly have thousands that I can really create relevant data to help me improve the systems and process so that we make the decision not on what I, as Sean Holliday, feel works, which is oftentimes how we practice, but literally how do we deliver that? So that means you assess intraoral scans. You look at data points like treatment time, how many visits. You also superimpose cases. So you look at what actually happened. And when you do that across hundreds or thousands of cases, you come up with some pretty darn good recipes.
Now, are you superimposing the ClinChecks or like the Cephs?
The Cephs, yeah.
Okay.
Pre-post-treatment Cephs, yeah. Or CBCTs, depending on what we got. But yes.
Great. So we got a really fantastic Black Pearl from Maui here. Do you have one more you can give us before we move on?
So remember that digital practice starts with the scanning. So you need to scan every patient when they come into your practice. It's a key process, I think, from an experience perspective. It makes you think differently. Oftentimes we do an exam, we miss things. So using so much digital tools, whether it's scanning, AI, and things like that, you can have AI take notes while you're doing an exam. It can give you a summary of those things. Plus, you can go in there and do a scan and have digital data, which is 3-dimensional. Within seconds, you can show the patient outcome simulation. You can adjust it with 3D controls if you need it. You can show an in-face visualization of how the smile and everything looks like. It makes the appointments very impactful and very purposeful, and it certainly helps us from efficiency because once you see the patient and they're fresh in your mind, so you know what the patient's concerned about, you listen to what the concerns are, you've seen and you made a diagnosis, the treatment plan's locked and loaded. Unless the case is really complex, most of the time, we have a good vision of what we do. We can discuss that with the patient, and it helps really a great new patient experience.
That's fantastic. And Sean, I know today you spoke about deep bites in class 2 patients, right? Any key pearls on that end?
Yeah, so I think the main thing is, like I said, you need to calibrate. I think digital to clinical calibration is key. And again, you're looking at treated cases, look at superimpositions and what actually happens. Like I said, you can look at photos and beautiful cases is really nice. But there's some key elements of success. So that's what I usually like to say. The key elements of success should be based on evidence-based information. So there are studies and things. Aligners have been around a long time. Clearly, I would say the studies are kind of sparse in certain areas, but there's enough knowledge to understand that it's no longer about does it work or not work.
Right.
I mean, just give me a break at that point. There's just what works well and what are the key features of success to be able to deliver the results. So if you look at a master clinician that does amazing work, you need to dissect that. You need to understand that. And hopefully that clinician knows how that was achieved. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes they're like, well, it just happened. It worked out. That to me is a sad fact. You should really know how you delivered it because predictability and success and being able to deliver that not as a shot in the dark, but really in the precision that that orthodontics is never foolproof. It's 100%. That's why we'll never be replaced, right? Computers thinks in ones and zeros and process, very usually black and white, right?
Correct.
Ones and zeros. We tend to sense the nuance. There's a discernment in the process that as clinicians we can see because when things work out great, anybody can do it. But when it all hits the fan and then the outcome's not working as it should, you got to figure out those head scratchers are really tough. And even if there's generative AI and all this other stuff, it's just really all that information. That's where a clinician comes into play. And I think the key things that I mentioned from a deep bite and class 2 correction is the key elements of success, right? So deep bites, we talked about leveling the curve of speed was a key thing in setting up overcorrections, over treatments, how we handle that. And then we use force features to intrude the lower incisors, which is usually the most common in leveling the curve of speed for a deep bite. We use bite ramps to be able to, bite turbos, so to speak, to control the vertical. And then you need to make sure that the lower incisor usually is a little bit more facial.
Interesting.
Yeah, and support that, of course, with attachments that help you to support those movements.
So it's interesting. On my last podcast with Dr. Christian Groth, we talked about how he uses 3M Clarity's stiffer material, which is the forced material, to rapidly intrude the deep bite before he actually starts leveling and aligning. But it sounds like you have a different approach with the bite ramps and the supported attachments and bringing the incisors maybe a little more forward.
Yeah. So I've used many, many different clear aligner products. I have personal experience on 3M, and I think a lot of companies are very innovative. What I found is that plastic behaves very different than arch wires. So I get the whole night tie versus stainless steel, but plastics behave somewhat differently. I just focus more on force features. So the position of the tooth has to be right on in the digital setup. You have to have the proper force system that delivers. So you have to extrude the posterior teeth, intrude the anterior teeth. You support that with bite ramps and other things like that. But I think the other is making sure that you build an effective appliance. And the plastics are a tricky bunch. There's limitations and there's some nuance to it. But plastics don't behave like wires, but they still have key elements in elasticity and things that are very important. So I tend to use very light forces, but oftentimes what I'll use is a heavy amount of attachments because the corrugation, the bends around in the plastic do deliver more strength and more rigidity. So you can change that sometimes with the property of the plastic by doing a different, more rigid material. And then the other way that you can do it is also just changing the dimensions, the 3D shape of the aligners as well. So, like a cardboard basically is a piece of paper, but it's corrugated to strength. And so that's what you can do with plastics as well to adjust it.
When we come back in just a moment, Sean shares how he built a multi-doctor practice that stays calibrated, collaborative, and aligned, even across multiple locations. Plus, we'll explore how his Ortho Masterclass platform is helping orthodontists level up their digital skills while reclaiming time for what matters most. Stay with us. You're listening to the Illuminate Orthodontic Podcast. Kind support for this podcast comes from Grin. Grin is more than remote monitoring. It's a complete digital ecosystem designed to help practices work smarter, not harder. By combining AI-powered automation, real-time clinical insights, and integrated referral and engagement tools, Grin reduces inefficiencies, drives practice growth, and improves outcomes. And for patients, it means a seamless experience that keeps them connected and coming back. With Grin, providers gain smarter workflows, patients enjoy better care, and practices thrive. Learn more about how Grin transforms oral care at get-grin.com. And we're back to our conversation with Dr. Sean Holliday. Sean, I want to circle back to what you said before. You mentioned you have the 4 locations, 5 doctors. Like you said, there are, I think, some challenges, right, to being in a group setting, making sure everyone's calibrated, communicating properly. What challenges do you think you face running such a large operation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say the biggest challenge is always leadership. I always think I'm always the source of the problem and I'm not always the source of the solution. So leadership is number one, I would say. Communication. Leadership comes from everything from the basis, the vision. You got to set the tone of what's expected. Your team follows through, and then oftentimes your behavior outperforms your, what you say. Oftentimes what you say, but what you do is more important, right?
Yeah.
And so leadership is number one. And I think in that way, that's where doctor calibration comes in.
I actually met 2 of your associates. I don't know if you know the story, but I met Brad Chun and Sherry Shimogaki at a Dynaflex Exceptional Aesthetics course a while back.
So Todd, you didn't meet him. He's been with us for over 8 years. Brad's been over 6. Sherry's been 3 years. And then we have a new associate, Melissa. So
great.
it's awesome. And calibration is the key thing. So in fact, Brad and Sherry were there because we do the Norris appliance, right? So we don't see all aligners, and we do fixed appliances.
You have braces in your practice?
Yeah,
Sean?
we do have. I know. It's shameful. Nah. No, we love braces. Like I said, I'm an orthodontist. I'm there to treat the patient as they want. I just find that most patients want aligners. And so my job is to deliver uncompromised results in the modality that the patient wants. That's my philosophy. And that's what we do. So we see a lot of adults, we see a lot of kids, we do all the stuff. But back to my calibration point, is who better to learn about the Norris appliance than Tito himself, right? So Chad was there, Foster, you've had. And so they had a great experience. I was unfortunately unable to go, but I said,
you missed out.
But I've known Tito for a long time.
Yes.
And so, and I made the choice conscientiously. It was not happenstance that I chose the appliance. So I said, hey, Brad and Sherry, I'd love for you guys to learn how to do the Norris system, and who else better to learn it than Tito? So that's how I sent them over there.
Yeah, that's so cool. Let me ask you this, Sean. What do you look for when bringing in an associate?
Yeah, so orthodontics, like I said, is not a one-man or one-woman sport. And many times in the practice, you lead teams. And that's a huge advantage. I would say the most successful practices have amazing leadership. They have leaders at the helm that run this practice into success, right? The challenge that's in my practice, as we collaborate, we calibrate, we work together, we work as a team. Team becomes much more important than having, the most amazing person on paper, so to speak. They may be the smartest, brightest person, but being a team player is ultimately the key. Mm-hmm. So that's what I find first and foremost, because we work together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't have someone that's doing their own thing or going against the grain, so to speak, with everybody else. Not that I want everybody to be,
a total
cheap,
conformist,
conformist. I love to be challenged. I love when our doctors come and say, hey, Sean, why are you doing this? I should do this better. And I'm all for it. I say, you try out this. You show me the data and show me that it works. But as they say, there's many ways to skin the cat, but sometimes some ways are more efficient than others. You know what I mean? Yeah. I can get to the destination, but if you take 4 years to get there and I can do it in 12 months, that way is going to be the way that we're going to do it in the practice. Does that make sense? So
totally.
that's what we focus on. Yeah.
I love that. And this ties in and transitions very nicely to Ortho Masterclass, which I'm excited to talk about. Sean, you were so kind to give me a little bit of a preview on the course. In the beginning, I love this, that you talked about the bullet train theory, right? So in Japan, for those of you who don't know, there's a train, right? The bullet train that goes from Tokyo to Osaka. And you mentioned how it took over 100 innovations to get the speed of a traditional train above 120 miles per hour. So it wasn't just one easy fix. They had to implement all these things. And I found that so interesting and intriguing. And I love the content you put out. It's interesting because I think all of the aligner courses are a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But what I love about your content, so well curated, and you have these micro learns, I would describe it.
Yeah, that's what we focused on. I love lecturing. I love in-person events. But I think when you think about virtually, we went through COVID and it's basically everything went virtual. Mm-hmm. And we all got a pretty good experience of what we like and don't like virtually. And virtual, when you do a course online, it should not be an imitation of a live course.
Great
I think
point.
It should be a shorter course. There's a place for live courses and there's a place for online learning. And what I have found in my research is that microlearns are the best way, right? That's how TED Talks are 18 minutes or less. That's why a lot of different courses are really short, because you want courses that you can consume in a very short amount of time. We're all busy. So I run multi-doctor practice. We focus on constantly evolving, constant never-ending improvement, improving the way that we do things. And so that's where the learning really came. Ortho Masterclass as an inception was basically my standard operating procedures, a learning course. As I brought in more doctors, I was spending hours per week helping a doctor, coaching them, getting them to a certain level. Then I brought in another doctor, and then I'm spending extra time with that doctor. And then at some point I thought, well, then I either have to stop clinical practice and become the CEO of this company, which is one way to do it, or I can put it all together in a course and give the resources to my team and be able to do what I love, which is still patient care. So I still focus several days to do that. And so I don't have to spend a tremendous amount of time, and those resources are for my associates as well as now. Then I offer it to everybody as a monthly subscription. It's evergreen content. That's the difference.
Oh, that's great.
Microlearns
Yeah.
and evergreen content. So unlike a course or a book or anything else that has, A to Z, beginning to the end, constantly
You're refreshing
delivering.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. And tell me how the subscription model works.
So I don't do it for the money, just need to cover costs. And so I don't charge several $1,000s for a course or whatever. Basically, it's a low cost subscription. I think we charging like $99 a month to month subscription. You like it?
Great.
Great. If you don't, you can unsubscribe. But it's basically constant evolving content. Again, because it's evergreen, I like to think I'm like Netflix or Spotify, not that level of millions of songs or contents, but basically you can watch whatever you want. You can binge watch it if you want, or you can just consume it at your leisure, at lunch or every once in a while. And so it's purposeful so that way you don't have to search through, let's say, a 2-hour lecture and it's online, but you're interested in the deep bite protocols. And it was like at an hour and 30 minutes into the talk, like that's just very hard for someone to reconsume versus like if it's searchable, it's tagged and it's set into these microlearns, you can dive directly into it. Right. In other words, if you see a really tough case, a deep bite case or an open bite case, whatever, and you say, hey, I really want to tune in on that, you can go jump right into that content, 5, 10, 15 minutes.
That's
you
great.
Watch it and then you can refresh. And so that's kind of the vision of it. So again, microlearns, evergreen content.
And you have like hundreds of videos on there.
Yeah, over 400 videos. We have hundreds of hours of content. Yeah. And so each month I come out with content. At some point I was doing it weekly because it forced myself, it's practice. So it's developing a habit. I was like the book is called Atomic Habits, James Clear. If you've ever heard of that book, it's amazing. So at some point you fall to the level of your systems and developing a habit, just like anything else that we do in life, I just developed this habit of creating content over and over. Not to force myself, but it's just conditioned myself to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's great.
It helps me to do it too, because I can do these microlearns and little by little, all of a sudden I just have a huge amount of compounding content that I can use for lectures. I can use it to help doctors as I coach or that kind of thing. So if people have questions for me, they shoot me an email. I'm usually glad to just jump in on a call or send them information or links and that kind of stuff.
Awesome. And I want to mention too that besides the virtual, you also have this in-office immersion course.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we started with the immersion course, I think like in 2014 or something like that. It's been a long time. We've done a new iteration recently, and so we'll have one in October, kind of around the time of the Western Orthodontic Conference. So it's a 2-day course. If you really want to learn the Holliday way, that's what it is. So, I do a lot of lectures on clinical technique. I'm glad to do it for Align and present their product. But this course is really how we do things in the practice. In fact, the first day, you're barely going to see any ClinChecks and stuff. It's really about business leadership. You get to meet my management team, the way that we do that leadership. How do we communicate as a team? Because we're a multi-doctor practice, multi-location practice. There's some nuances to that drive that. And then, by the way, we talked about the cost of living. It costs $400 per square foot to build an office in Hawaii. It's painfully so. It's very expensive. So my smallest office is 888 square feet.
Wow.
And we produce like over 2.5 million out of that
Good
small
for
space.
you.
Yeah,
That's
in
amazing.
4 days. So digital practice is a whole different ballgame. You know? And so you have to run lean. You have to run a different kind of office. And I think in certain spaces, it's fine. If you can build a huge office and it's inexpensive, it's beautiful to have all that stuff. But you have to run really purposefully in this mini office. And you can't have people in the chairs. You can't have patients spending 20 visits to do a 2-year treatment plan. So you have to come in with virtual monitoring. You have to be able to see the patients efficiently, effectively. And you have to run lean as far as the team. So those are some of the unique concepts that I'm able to share. So what I try to do through Ortho Masterclass, whether it's my immersion course or my online content, is how do I give a different spin of things? Because I think knowledge and all these other things, it's not a zero-sum game, right? The more, the better that it is. In fact, some people take my ideas and they make something better out of it. And I think that's the advantage of what we do. So that abundance mindset, so to speak, in that end helps us to create unique things. And so we do things differently than anybody else. So that's what I try to share.
That's awesome. And who doesn't want to go to the beautiful island?
That's a small perk.
Yeah, a small perk. Yeah. So definitely check that out. I do want to mention real quickly, orthomasterclass.com if you're interested. Again, I thought it was fantastic content. So congratulations, Sean. I want to switch gears here a little bit. I want to talk about something else that you're passionate about, and that's being a member of the Schulman Group.
Yeah, being a member of the Schulman Group has been a life-changing opportunity for me. It's interesting because someone nominated me and they just like, Sean, this guy named Ron Rudman's going to call you and just say yes. Whatever he invites you to, say yes. So Ron's a good friend. He was running the Schulman Group at the time. And in 2014, I had a pretty amazing practice, but I would say from all measures on the outside, I was like the poster child of success. But in many ways, I actually was very low point in my life, just a lot of challenges. It's just part of things, I think in life we have great times and then other times there's some challenges, right? And the key is to break through that.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, practicing literally on an island, just not having the ability to travel as much and those kind of things, it's something that I really needed. And just to have a group of sharp men and women who practice at a different level was just an amazing opportunity because I could see success in many different, it's a spectrum, right? It's not black and white.
Absolutely.
It's a full color spectrum. And so there's lots of models of practice where you can be successful. There's no one way. And that's what I love about the Schulman Group. But I also loved that some doctors, let's say Tito is a great example. I mean, he works for a few days and travels the world, and I was like,
I know.
I want that. I didn't want to be in this machine where I was working 6-7 days a week, couldn't travel. If I did, I'd lose production. Then I'm stressed out. Then I'm away from my family and kids, and I was already away from them as tough as it is in the practice.
Right.
And so I felt like I was doing things right, and then I learned that I wasn't. And that's a hard lesson, I think, in life. As I've gotten older, you get a little more introspective in things, and you realize that you need to really stick to your purpose in your life, right? Mm-hmm. You need to purge those things that do not add value to your life. And sometimes those things are really difficult, right? Mm-hmm. It could be that office manager at your office and you just, you know what I mean? Life is too short to live with that person. I mean, sometimes it's a very deep relationship. For me, I mean, it comes down to even from marriage and stuff like that. So you have to make decisions of changing things, right? And sometimes you can improve stuff and sometimes it's just parting ways in the best way that you can. And that's what I learned as I went through that in a period of a few years, was just really focusing on who I am and where do I want to be and how do I approach that. And that's, in some ways, I credit the Schulman Group from that end, because it's a great group of people that have made lifelong friendships. But it's also a perspective that you can't see the label from within the bottle, so to speak. I've heard that phrase, right? And so when you're in the midst of it, in the whirlwind of life of practice, it's hard sometimes to think and step back and say, what am I doing? Who am I doing it for? And what is it that fills my cup, right? So you can't fill somebody else's cup from an empty cup. In other words, you have to be in this abundant state that you're doing what you love to do, that even though you're working really hard, you're passionate about it and you're doing for the right reasons, that you're doing it in the right way, and to the point that then from there, you are able to share that to those that are closest to you. You can be the best husband or father or whatever else that you can be, the same as a leader or boss in your practice. And so, like I said, it's not all about numbers. You can brag about plaques and how much money you're making, and I can tell you how much I gross and how many starts did you have and all that kind of stuff. And those things it's fun to banter about. But I think ultimately, just having an impactful life, we just realized that at some point, life is limited. I took a course one time and they said, just take a piece of paper, bend it in half. And on the left side, you say, I love to do. And on the right side, you say, I loathe to do. And you need to really assess that. And sometimes you need to look at what you do,
what a great exercise.
all those kind of things. And you need to dive in deep and say, I get that, for FOMO reasons or because that's just the way that people do it or that's how I directed my life, that sometimes you do climb the mountain, so to speak, and then you realize you're at the wrong place, And so you should love the journey, not the destination, right? So I like to say you shouldn't have a map, but you should really have a compass. You need to have a compass internally of what it is that you love to do and what drives you, but not necessarily a map of where you want to be. I run a very successful practice from my perspective. I think from many measures, you would say that it's great. And I would say the greatest part is many times is just who I work with and what my life is, my wife and my kids, and all those just drive me from that perspective. But at the same time, just loving what you do, right? And so that's the same thing. It's just whatever I don't love to do, I just purge that. You delegate it, you remove it, you take away anything that drives toxicity and drives you down in your life, and you focus on the fun stuff because that's really what matters.
You know, Sean, I find it so interesting too, because I feel like maybe people assume that people join the Schulman Group because they want to share numbers, scale their practice, grow their practice. You actually sought out Schulman more for like work-life balance, right?
In some ways, yeah. And I think that's a misnomer. I think Schulman Group is seen as these guys and gals that run crazy big practices. And I have a big practice. But we have small practice, single doctor practice, multi-doctor practice. And I think from the outskirts, you would say yes. But I would say my biggest take of learning from these people, creating friendships, understanding people that are there for you, not just because of the numbers, but really about what's going on in your life, whether it's, family members or they're ill or, somebody's trying to get their kid advice about college or different areas of opportunity. Sometimes, they were like medical emergencies and somebody would know they were out of the country and then they would tell them right away, hey, reach out to this person. So the Schulman Group is really more about that relationship. Yes, we run statistics and analyses and things like that, but that's been my biggest take is getting to know people, colleagues. Birds of the same feather flock together. I like to always use a lot of sayings, but really as orthodontists, we're very similar and we're far more alike than we are different.
Very true.
And so we go through very similar journeys. And so not everybody's the same, but you get to see a cohort of people that are very similar. And you hone into those that are friends that maybe they run a different practice, but they kind of have some of the same priorities that you do in life. And they focus a lot on other things in a balanced life because anybody can work 7 days a week and produce the heck out of their practice. But only a few people can work 2-3 days and have just a successful practice. And that's pretty amazing. I mean, the doctors can produce a ton or they can focus on everything. And I like to say everybody has a superpower to some degree. I can say, well, maybe clear aligners or some other scale process is mine. But it's very interesting to see a group of people that perform really highly and they have different superpowers. That's how that's how I've always seen the Schulman Group.
No, it's super interesting. And I understand too, they brought in some new and younger members recently too.
Yeah, so they have some pretty amazing members. And it's hard, Chris, to think that I'm no longer the new and younger member.
Me neither, buddy.
But yeah, it's exciting because they do things differently. I think just practice is very different now than it was even like 10, 20 years ago. And so it is fun. It is a great group. It's a very exclusive group. So you do have to hit certain targets. You do have to have a certain size practice. And of course, there's geographic exclusivity and things like that. But I would say if you can't join the Schulman Group, you need to really think about a group that helps you from a multifaceted perspective. Because you got your personal things going on, you got family stuff, and you have business things. And you need to make sure that all of those are in balance. Because when you get out of balance, that's when things really go bad.
Well said and great advice, Sean. I want to transition here a little bit and learn a little more about Hawaii life, which I think a lot of us mainlanders are very curious about. So what's life like on the island of Hawaii? What do you and your family like to do for fun?
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful place. I love being there. So I think because I'm from Costa Rica, yes, I'm adaptable, but at the same time, Costa Rica is very focused on family values, family structure. And Hawaii is all about ohana, right? So culturally, I saw in sync to that, to Latin American community culture and things like that. Just different in other ways. But Hawaii is a beautiful place, and not just because of where it is or what it is. We love to go to the beach and things, but we love to do hikes. We love nature. My wife, Jackie, is a photographer, so she's getting her master's in photography.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I love photography. And she and I are
I've seen some of your shots.
So many ways. Yeah, thanks. I'm a rookie compared to her now. We used to compete all the time on who got the best shot. And now that she's getting her master's, I just almost give up at some point because I cannot. I'm not at the same ninja level. But I always love my wife's perspective because she looks at things a very nuanced way, and I'm looking at the same darn thing that she is. She knows something in a different perspective. So I love that, of how we can share that with the kids. Being in nature is kind of our main thing. And then the other is just cultural. I love travel, food. And to me, language is the same thing. You get to know so much about a people through what they eat, what the families do, and what their language is like. And so Hawaii is fun from that perspective. We travel. I mean, I'm geographically challenged because I literally live in the middle of the Pacific. So any journey is a haul, right?
Yeah.
So I can't just like hop on a car or a
2-hour
short little
flight,
flight to go to a meeting or whatever. So I tend to be very purposeful of where I go.
Yeah.
But travel is always fun. I think the main thing is we're oftentimes the consumer society. Consumption it's not necessarily a positive thing. I think being experiential is always very important. So that's what we do as a family, is try to focus on those experiences that we can have together. We love to eat out. I think, like I said, we saw in sync because although I'm not big into drinking, I do love a really good signature cocktail. I like to have a really well-crafted, cocktail. Beverage is a beautiful thing. And I think the same goes with food and that kind of experience. So that's what I love about life and travel and being with family. Yeah. Fantastic. I like to cook, and we've done all kinds of different things.
I guess that's Pura Vida, right?
Pura Vida, yes. So I get to, Costa Rica's Pura Vida and live in Aloha. So,
I love it. Sean, before we wrap it up, do you have any speaking engagements?
Well, in October, the Western Orthodontic Conference is going to be in Honolulu. So obviously that's a short travel for me. That commute's going to be super long, on the H1. Chris.
Yes. Yeah. And your immersion course,
so
right?
I'm having the immersion course, and then WOCON I will be presenting. So that's a PCSO RMSO meeting.
Oh, great.
So that's going to be a great venue. And I'm going to be at the Arizona Orthodontic Society meeting in Scottsdale.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, excellent. Sean, if people would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I mean, the best way is probably to email me, Sean@orthomasterclass.com. Just reach out anytime.
Fantastic. Sean, it's been an incredible honor to have you on this podcast finally. I'll share a story that when I came out with the idea for Illuminate, you were on my short list of people to interview. So thrilled to make this happen, thrilled to make it happen at an AAO meeting. And thank you. Lots of great insight today, lots of great pearls and takeaways for the listener. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm a huge fan, Chris, as you know. I listen to all your episodes. So
you're making me blush.
Have a great product here. A great podcast. Awesome job.
Thank you so much, Sean. Looking forward to having dinner. Hopefully we have, Philly's a foodie town, so I think we'll find a great spot tonight, hopefully with one more delicious beverage. But in the meantime, let's cheers our glasses. Thank you to everybody for listening. Cheers to you, Sean. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's all for this episode of the Illuminate Orthodontic Podcast. On this episode, you discovered how embracing change can turn obstacles into opportunity, how mastering digital workflows can unlock new levels of efficiency, and how leading with vision and Aloha can inspire growth in both your practice and your life. If you're a fan of the show, be sure to follow Illuminate so you never miss a podcast. A very special thanks to our sponsors for this episode. That's the Aligner Intensive Fellowship and Grin. And we're proud to support orthodontic innovation through our Illuminate Spotlight feature, today highlighting the Tiny Changes Recycling Program led by Meso Sustainability Chair, Dr. Maddie Goodman. Thanks so much for listening to the Illuminate Orthodontic Podcast. As always, this podcast would not be possible without the Illuminate team. That's Skylar Adler, joined by Johnny Mitchell on the mixing console, and Tom O'Grady on the Fender Rhodes electric piano. Until next time, this is Dr. Chris Setta signing off. If you've listened this far, you've just found our hidden bonus content and outtakes. And finally, we're going to wrap it up talking about how your platform, Ortho Masterclass, and your in-office immersion course on the beautiful island of Hawaii can help you level up your orthodontic game. Let me try that one more time, Scotty. Can't even mention your names now. That's an outtake. Scotty and Jyler. Okay, I just combined your names. Guys, I know you think I'm drunk. I've had one sip of cocktail. Yeah. Sean is going to verify this.
He needs one more sip, I think, to get better.
Yeah, I actually get better, I think, the more cocktail I have. So, yes, I am just naturally an idiot. Okay, let's try that again. So have you ever learned to speak Hawaiian?
Unfortunately, no. I know just a few words.
So you know every language.
Except, I know
except
a few
you
words.
Can say aloha, like me.
In Hawaii, you have Hawaiian language, and then you have Hawaiian pidgin. You have to learn a few things, how to say things in Hawaii. Right. So, yeah.
That is so funny. From UMKC, where'd you go after that?
Do you want to talk about the digital stuff?
Yeah. Your story. Thank you, Sean. Yes. Yeah. See, screwing up here.
No, I didn't want to skip past that. Yeah.
Since I love how you're like on the side. Hey, P.S. We forgot the story. Yeah. How do I cue you up on that?
Because you have it in your intro. Remember?
I know. No. I remember. Yeah. ChatGPT. Yeah. AI wants us to talk about technology.
That's
Imagine
right.
that.
It does, of course. Yeah. Skynet.
How about you talk about technology? How great that is.
Yeah.
Great AI. Thanks, ChatGPT. You are so smart promoting yourself. Okay.